On Thursday, Bob sat down at the table and looked at his Miller bottle. He decided to just have a six-pack, because he didn't want to get too drunk if things took a turn later on. When the music from upstairs stopped, he realized his wife was almost ready. Usually, Bob worked late on Thursdays because his wife had bachelorette parties with her friends. His parents looked after their daughter, Casey, while his wife had drinks with her KO workers. Bob usually stayed late at work to finish paperwork and leave early on Fridays for family time. It all seemed perfectly planned. He carved out time in his busy schedule, and his parents lavished attention on their granddaughter. His wife, too, was enjoying her personal time with friends. Or at least, that's what he believed. The sound of his wife moving toward the bathroom reminded him of last Tuesday's lunch with Vicky. He thought about needing to visit the store again, or perhaps inquire about sandwich delivery. They were that good. Sitting down to keep an eye on the door was the best option. He soon spotted a familiar figure. He noticed a figure entering the restaurant, watching her skin the room. It was Bob Rose, and he waved. She spotted him and made her way over. Vicky was the eldest of his wife's former friends. Bob had always liked her, and noted that she was the only one married. She had an act for diffusing tension without being a pushover. He had to admit that Vicky was quite attractive, with her dark, wavy hair and fair complexion. She wasn't particularly endowed, but she had a beautiful face and long legs. Her husband Ron saw her as a gift from heaven, and she returned the sentiment, sitting down across from him. Vicky thanked Bob for meeting her. "I understand how busy you are, Bob. I really appreciate your time," she said, fixing him with a serious look. "No problem, Vicky," Bob replied. "Though I must admit, us being here without sharing feels a bit odd. I usually prefer dining with my wife, but since this is about Sharon, I'm listening. I assume you're planning something for her birthday next month?" Bob hadn't expected the sadness in Vicky's eyes when he mentioned Sharon or her birthday. "It might affect our friendship, but if it helps save your marriage. I have to tell you, there's no easy way to say this. Sharon has been seeing someone for 2 months. Vicky told Bob, who was stunned. "This has to be a joke," he said to Vicky. "It's not a joke," she replied. "It's been about 3 months. A few months ago, Sharon started to get depressed. She's been irritable at work, and when we go out, she seems even more bored than usual. After a few more days, we got her to open up. She said she misses you and feels abandoned. She also mentioned that you two are just an older married couple letting life pass them by." Just then, the waiter came to take Vicky's order. She asked for a Cobb salad and a lemon iced tea. Bob's mind raced with thoughts of his wife's secrecy in their 8 years together. He had been certain his wife would confide in him if she was unhappy. He believed they were always open about their feelings. Even when they disagreed, he turned to Vicky and urgently whispered, "Did she sleep with him?" Vicky replied, "At least not as far as I know. Knowing your wife, she's usually very open. That's why her behavior has surprised me." "Bob, you should know something. Almost every woman I've spoken to has said the same thing you and Sharon." Vicky continued, "I'm sure you've complained about being overwhelmed with life from time to time. When Sharon mentioned it, we all sympathized. She's a beautiful woman, Bob. We told her, you should pay more attention to her. Unfortunately, my sister was there that night." "Your sister?" Bob asked, struggling to contain his frustration. "Yes," Vicky replied. "My sister has a different approach to relationships. She suggested that if Sharon doesn't find romance at home, she should look elsewhere. I told her she was wrong, but then some of the others started talking about keeping options open. I think for them it was just talk. None of them were married. Sharon said she'd never cheat on you, but I think my sister's words planted doubts in her mind." Vicky said that Sharon's words had planted doubts in her mind, Bob asked, looking more uncertain than ever about his wife's fidelity. Vicky began by saying that the next week, Luke Jonas and his team joined us at the Red Horse Bar. Sharon said she hadn't invited him, but she had mentioned our group's plans to him. Normally it's fun when new people join, but not this time. With Luke around, Bob now had a name to go with the face, he demanded, and Vicky noticed his firm tone and smiled slightly before continuing. "Luke Jonas is known for chasing women. He doesn't care if they're married or single, as long as they show interest. He enjoys the thrill of the chase. Your wife caught his eye from the start, but she hadn't pursued him until that night. Since then, instead of setting boundaries, she's been avoiding him. It's well known that if Luke faces another harassment complaint, he'll be fired. She could shut him down, but she hasn't. They've been seen talking in the cafeteria a lot these past couple of months." I tried discussing it with her, but she got defensive, insisting they were only friends and that Luke listened to her and understood her problems. I asked if she would act the same way if you were present, and she blushed, admitting she wouldn't. Then she got upset, mentioning that you hadn't been noticing her after that. I backed off and kept an eye on things. It seemed like everything had settled. She was defensive, insisting they were only friends and that Luke listened to her and understood her problems. I asked if she would act the same way if you were present. She blushed and admitted she wouldn't. Then she got upset, mentioning that you hadn't been noticing her after that. I backed off and kept an eye on things. It seemed like everything had settled. I thought things were back to normal at work until the incident 3 weeks ago. As Vicky's order arrived, she began to eat while Bob sipped his lemonade. His mind was elsewhere, wondering how she could think he'd be upset about her flirting with another man. He knew he wasn't overly jealous because he trusted his wife. As for not noticing her, he wondered if he'd become too absorbed in his work. There was a big reward waiting at the end of the project, but perhaps he'd pushed too hard. He was curious about the incident from 3 weeks ago. Did he really want to know? For the next 5 minutes, they ate in silence while Bob processed Vicky's revelations. He was undoubtedly. She was angry and had no reason to be so close to another man. He could almost understand her logic if he had been more attentive. Maybe none of this would have happened if he had been more attentive. By not telling him about her flirtatious behavior, she had essentially lied to him. Of course, it was a lie by omission, but for now he could overlook it and focus on fixing the situation. He would talk to her and share his concerns if she was honest, and agreed to distance herself from Luke. They could move forward, but he hadn't seen any lasting damage, unless something significant had happened in the past 3 weeks. "Tell me what happened 3 weeks ago. How bad was it?" he asked, feeling more grounded now. Vicky looked at him sympathetically. "This is where it gets ugly, Bob. I took her to the restroom and realized she was more drunk than I thought. When we came out, she was holding her underwear and saying she wanted to feel free. I figured it was the alcohol talking and helped her back to our table. I tried to convince Hannah and Gail to help me take Sharon into my place so she wouldn't go home in that state. But then I saw her and Luke getting too close, bumping into each other, and acting inappropriately on the dance floor after the group dancing ended. The rest of the night was a blur. I saw Sharon slip her underwear into Luke's pocket at the end of a song. Unfortunately, the whole bar noticed and some people whistled. Luke and his friends even kissed her one. Even his friends recorded it on their phones. I was hoping Sharon would pull away, but she didn't. She saw Bob's reaction, and Vicky continued carefully. Bob's jaw dropped, and he had to excuse himself, standing up and walking away to splash water on his face in the bathroom. He gripped the sink tightly, recalling the night Sharon came home late, around 2:30 a.m., after Vicky called to say she'd be staying over because Sharon had been drinking too much. This had happened before, and Bob was always grateful that Vicky and the others made sure Sharon didn't drive home drunk. He remembered their passionate night together afterwards, and he sensed something different in her behavior. Returning to the present, he felt anger surging through him, not just from the betrayal but also from the thought that Sharon might have been thinking about another man while they were together. After collecting himself, he returned to the table, noticing the sympathy in Vicky's eyes. He was unsure how to respond, so he asked Vicky for more details. "Honestly, Bob, that's about it." Vicky said the recent bachelorette parties were held at Hannah's house with wine and a lingerie show at work. Sharon seems distant with Luke. I thought it was over, but I saw them talking yesterday. They stopped when I approached, so I'm not sure what's going on. I thought you should know, especially since she doesn't seem to be listening to her friends anymore. The waiter brought the bill and Bob quickly grabbed it and searched for his credit card. "I'd like to see what's going on and put an end to it right away." He said that Sharon mentioned you ladies were going to the Red Horse Bar this week, so maybe I'll show up and watch them from the sidelines. He paused, noticing the apprehension on Vicky's face. "What did I say wrong?" he asked. Vicky replied, "Hannah has a doctor's appointment early Friday morning and Gail is visiting her. If Sharon goes out this Thursday, it won't be with us." Reaching across the table to take his hand, she added, "I'm so sorry, Bob. I know it's probably better not to ask if you're okay, but here's my home phone number. Call any time if you need to talk to me. My husband is a marriage counselor, so he might be helpful. Thanks for telling me, Vicky. I know this must be tough for you, but I truly believe you're a good person and a good friend. I'm not sure what comes next, but I'm aware of the situation now and I can take some action." Bob expressed his gratitude as he got up from the table, settled the bill, and left the next day, Wednesday. There was a breakthrough at work. His team managed to get hold of a supply of finished parts from a startup company in Harrisburg. This meant they could cut setup time by 2 months and make sure they had at least a week's supply, despite the unstable logistics. With just a couple more phone calls, the project would be finished 2 months ahead of schedule, saving millions for the military. The cash bonus would be big, just like Bob thought it would be. The project's success would also make him look good. But even though there was good news all around, Bob didn't feel happy. He was dreading going home and facing what he now needed to do. He decided to look into it for himself. He couldn't access Sharon's work email, but he doubted they were using it to communicate given HR's oversight. He logged into her personal Yahoo account, but there was nothing incriminating. She could easily have another account he didn't know about. Bob recognized his lack of tech skills, buying security cameras or installing voice-activated microphones, for example. Microphones sounded like a good idea in theory, but he had a simpler plan in mind. He simply aimed to gather as much information as possible to gauge the extent of effort required to salvage or terminate his marriage. Sharon had already taken the daughter Casey from his parents and manipulated him into delivering Chinese food when she asked what she wanted. She said that after 10 years together, and 8 of them married, he should know by now that she loves him. He couldn't resist being sarcastic in his response, mentioning that he just wanted to ensure she was still content with the arrangement. His phone rang immediately after, and she then requested, and if it hadn't been for that bombshell yesterday, he'd have been over the moon to get home an hour earlier and spend time with his wife and child. But when he looked at the clock, he realized that before the project began, this hour would have been 2 hours later. He also realized that he hadn't been home with it was still early on Friday, and he hadn't been home with his family since the project started. Add to that fatigue and stress, and it was understandable why Sharon might feel neglected. But that didn't justify her actions. As he entered through the front door, he caught sight of his wife reaching for a bottle of wine. She was 31 and she still looked great. At 5 feet tall, she was the epitome of womanhood, boasting curves that were undeniably enticing even in loose sweatpants. Her shapely rear was evident, and with her hair tied back in a ponytail, she turned around, flashing him a radiant smile. He reflected on how incredibly fortunate he was to have her. Then reality hit him. "I'm so happy." "Hi, honey, how was work?" she asked, giving him a kiss on the lips. "Pretty good. We've made a major breakthrough on some FES, so we might finish the project at least a month ahead of schedule. Since it's classified, I want you to know that you and Casey are my top priority. I'll do everything I can to keep us safe." Did he detect a hint of remorse or guilt? Or was he just imagining things? It was one of those moments when he cursed his inability to read people. He often labeled it straightforward. He liked to get things out in the open, and expected others to do the same. He knew his approach might come across as a bit blunt, but people appreciated his honesty and straightforwardness. This method had served him well for 34 years, and he saw no reason to change it until now. "Oh, darling," she responded. "We both adore you and understand. I wish there were more of you around, but I know this is only temporary. Still, I'm glad you acknowledge it." She seemed on the verge of tears. Was she genuinely emotional or just a skilled actress? "So what does the project's early completion mean for you?" she inquired, unpacking food containers from her bag. "Firstly, it means a substantial I'll get a bonus on top of my salary, but I don't know how much until the project is approved. It's not a small amount, though. Also, if we get this government project approved, it'll bring more work to the company. The project leader there might get some good offers from government contractors who want to work with me. UPS is aware of this, so I might be able to negotiate some additional perks if all goes well. It should be quite rewarding," he explained, attempting to eat his sweet and sour pork with chopsticks before opting for a fork. "Didn't I mention this before?" he queried between bites. "Not that I recall," he added. "Darling," she replied, "I remember you mentioning a big contract you couldn't talk about, but it sounded promising. Since then we haven't had much conversation," she added, looking a bit down. "But it looks like my husband will be back soon." He added a brighter tone to his voice and glanced at her, thinking it was time to go fishing. "So, ladies, which bar are you heading to tomorrow night? Should I swing by after work to make sure you're all okay to drive home?" he asked, aiming for a casual tone. "Actually, we decided to go to the Red Horse Bar for some group dancing, but I think we'll be done before you finish work," she replied, her gaze shifting to her orange chicken. His heart sank at that moment. He carried her into the living room for the next hour and read her a story after story until she fell asleep on the sofa. He went upstairs he tucked her in bed and kissed her forehead. Tears welled in his eyes as he thought about the day ahead and how he wanted his daughter to remember these lovely evenings with her parents, not the challenges that were coming. He went back downstairs to where his wife was sleeping on the sofa. He gave her a quick kiss and pulled the blanket over her to keep her warm. Then he went to find her phone, which he found plugged into a wall socket on the nightstand in their bedroom. He unlocked it with a swipe. He quickly scanned her text messages, and it didn't take long to find what he was looking for. He then went back and read through their messages from the past 3 months. "Hey, beautiful. It was fun watching you and the girls dance last night. Likewise. Bob works late on Thursdays and the in-laws. Laws was looking after Casey, so we had a girls' night. He's a great guy, letting you have some fun. I don't want any misunderstandings." She asked if Bob would approve of how we've been acting, which made me think we might be giving off the wrong signals. I shouldn't be confiding all my issues to another guy. I'll try talking to Bob. He understands, but if you can't, if you want to get his attention, you know where to find me. I'll even treat you to dinner if you need me to, just as friends. Bob couldn't remember her discussing anything with him, but it might have been when he discovered the need for a food supplier. He had spent several days sourcing a supplier capable of meeting the required quantity during that period, so he could have been oblivious to everything, even if a bomb had dropped on him. Until now, when he reviewed her messages, it seemed obvious that this guy was making advances towards her. How could she not see it? He encountered the next batch of messages. "You have to return them today." "What are you referring to? What video? Nobody at work can see this." "Sam was there and he filmed it on his phone. I'll make sure he deletes it, but you owe me." "I can't lose Bob, not after last night." "What happened last night? It's really none of your business. Was he upset that you came home late and intoxicated?" It was pretty funny. "Let's just say something happened that turned everything upside down and leave it at that." "So some dancing with me made you work for your husband's forgiveness. He should be thankful to me. Otherwise, give me back my underwear and make sure that video is deleted." "Damn it. It sounded like I was some sort of fancy woman. Please just watch over me and be the friend you claim to be. Handle what I've asked you to. I'm sorry, but I'll help you out afterwards. Just make sure no one sees this video. I'll do whatever you want." Nothing further happened until last Monday. "I heard the bachelorette. The party is off. How about dinner with me instead?" "Not a good idea, sorry." "Come on, your husband will be at work, and the girls left you alone one evening with a friend. We can chat like we used to in the cafeteria. Besides, you owe me. I'll meet you at the Red Horse at 8, okay? I'll meet you at TGF at the Sharon. I'd rather not go to a hotel because I don't want to be bothered by drunk idiots. If we drink too much, I'll get a room. I'm just going out for dinner with a couple of friends, and I'm grateful to you for ensuring the video never surfaced. It's bad enough that people at work have heard about this. Don't worry about it. If I saw Sam delete the video, it won't be long before someone else does something scandalous and you'll be fine. See you at 8. That's when it hit him. This was likely the end of his marriage. How often had he witnessed his wife going on a date with another man at a hotel restaurant bar? How could this possibly end well? She didn't realize this was crossing a line. She'd closed the messages. He reconnected her phone to the charger, undressed and slipped into bed alone. He didn't sleep for a long time on Thursday. She descended the stairs wearing her little black dress. It was the one she always wore when they went out together. She looked stunning. Pausing at the bottom of the stairs, she spotted him seated at the table. "I didn't expect you to come home so early today, sweetheart," she said, her tone faltering slightly. "We need to talk, Sharon," he replied, his voice devoid of emotion. "This is perhaps the most crucial conversation we'll ever have," he said. "Please take a seat." She looked apprehensive and reached out for his hand as usual, but he withdrew it. "I know there won't be a bachelorette party today. I know you're seeing Luke Jonas behind my back," he began. "Please let me explain," Bob said, but he abruptly interrupted, slamming his fist on the table. "Damn it, Sharon, listen to me. I can't speak until I've said my piece." She recoiled, tears welling up in her eyes. He regarded her impassively and continued, "I know you kissed that guy at lunch. I know you danced with him at the Red Horse. I know you took off your underwear and gave them to him after some suggestive moves on the dance floor. Floor, I know you were all over me 3 weeks ago because you were excited about him. I also know you're going on a date with him tonight to a restaurant and a hotel where your boyfriend has already made a reservation. I just don't know if you've already slept with him, and I don't know what could have happened." He paused, trying to keep his anger in check. "Sharon, you haven't told me the truth about Luke. You haven't been completely honest about your R dance, and you haven't been honest about going out with the girls. Frankly, I'm exhausted, and I don't know if I can trust you anymore. I'm not sure if I want to salvage this marriage, but your actions show that you're no longer invested in the marriage. I've given you 3 options. 1. You can leave with your boyfriend, even if you don't sleep with him tonight. This will end our marriage. I won't want to save it. Second finger option 2. We sit here all night and you try to persuade me to work on saving our marriage. It'll be really tough for you to convince me, as I'm not at all convinced by what you say. But maybe you'll succeed because I truly love you, and we have a child to consider. I'll give you a 50% chance of success." He raised a third finger. "So I'm going to go with option 3. You take me with you tonight to confront your lover in front of me. You demand that he never speaks to or contacts you again. Then you allow us to speak to him privately for at least 15 minutes. This option is off the table. If you don't sleep with him or engage in any intimate activity, you'll earn the most respect, and I'll be 100% committed to making this relationship work. However, if you did, this is the only option that could potentially salvage our marriage. Sharon, which will you choose?" The question lingered in the air for nearly a minute. She seemed to be restraining herself from being sick as she looked at him. "Bob, I'm so sorry about everything. I need to talk to you. In response to your question, who will lead you or me? That was unexpected." He hadn't anticipated her opting for the meeting with her lover. He had thought it was almost certain she would sit here all night justifying her behavior. Agreeing to arrange the meeting with her lover was actually. She had some good points, but she was still in the negative. He took the keys and followed her to the car. Out of habit, he opened the door for her, and she nearly broke down in tears as he pulled out onto the road. She glanced at him. "I really messed everything up, didn't I?" she asked quietly. "Yes, Sharon, you really did," he replied, keeping his eyes on the road. "What can I do to fix this?" she asked. He pondered for a moment, considering a couple of scenarios. "Well, first and foremost, complete honesty from now on. I shouldn't even have to say this, but it seems like you think it's okay to withhold information or lie to me. You also need to find a way to make me believe what you say. I'm not sure how you plan to do this, but I wasn't the one who broke our trust. I think it's worth mentioning that he's dead to you. If we stay together, you won't talk to him at work. If he turns up at your bar, leave. If you can't leave, call me straight away. Don't accept drinks or gifts from him. Cut off all communication with him. When we get back tonight, you'll tell me everything. I don't want to hear your thoughts, like I should say that I was really focused on this project. So I'll take some responsibility if you feel any resentment towards me. Let me know. Finally, if you want to, schedule marriage counseling. If you prefer to choose a counselor yourself, feel free to do so. Maybe Ron can recommend someone when he's finished speaking." Her phone chimed. With a message, she glanced down and paled even further. "Where are you?" she murmured quietly. He reached out and she handed him the phone without a word. He scrolled through her text messages. There were a couple from earlier that day. "Hey, I booked a room with a jacuzzi. Maybe we can relax after lunch?" "Your bikini," she said. "You can't get me drunk enough to take a hot bath with you. I won't bring the bikini." He said, "We'll see, think maybe you won't need a bikini." And then just now he said, "Where are you while waiting for you?" "I had a glass of wine. I'm running a little late. I have a surprise. For you, him." "Oh, you brought your bikini. Perfect." He returned the phone to his wife. She read the messages and hung her head. "You know, these messages don't help your case." "Right, just the ones from today make it seem like you were planning to go up with him tonight. How much worse will it look if I scroll further?" he asked, knowing full well how damaging it would appear. "I suppose I should ask." He began, "Do you consider your text messages today as inappropriate flirting? Can you grasp how these exchanges have shattered all my trust in you?" Sleep with him? He couldn't help but think she was foolish. "Were you intending to give him your underwear after taking them off like you did a few weeks ago?" He didn't think she could get any paler, but he was wrong. "Sharon, we're almost there. You might want to fix your makeup and think about what you're going to say. You're going to tell Luke to avoid drinking wine." She pulled down the visor and got a napkin from the glove compartment as she started to calm down and stop crying. She started putting on mascara in a more composed tone. She asked, "By Bob, I understand why you think Luke was toying with me. You bring up a good point. I think you're right. But Bob, I don't understand how I didn't see this. I know my recent decisions don't reflect it, but I'm not naive. I've fended off more attractive and sophisticated men than Luke, so why did he target me? This is one of the reasons why I find it hard to believe what you're saying." He said, "Sharon, you're a beautiful, intelligent woman who should see through this nonsense. That's why I have to wonder, did you go along with it willingly?" I responded, "Imagine if I picked up some woman at a bar with this guy and lied to you, saying I was just going to dinner with her tonight. No wonder you're so angry." Her color seemed to be returning, and her voice grew slightly firmer. "Okay, I messed up and now I have to find a way to fix it. Thanks for giving me a chance." She leaned in to kiss me, but at the last moment I turned my head, allowing her to peck me on the cheek. "I'm not over this, not in the long run." She looked at me, almost shocked. We usually showed a lot of affection, and she had hoped we could get back to that. "What should I tell him?" she asked as we pulled into the restaurant parking lot, finding a spot. I turned off the engine and let my anger simmer. "What do I want you to tell him? Sharon, our relationship is barely hanging on because of your actions with that idiot. You two have shattered it. The heart of our marriage is our daughter. She could end up spending Thanksgiving with you and Christmas with me. I want to make this clear, so tell him whatever you want." She sat quietly for a moment, then sighed and opened the car door as we approached the restaurant in the hotel. She took a step as if reaching for my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't welcome or touch either. We entered, and a pretty red-haired girl stood behind the small kiosk, asking if we were a party of two. Before I could respond, my wife and Ed stated that we were meeting someone who was already present. The hostess acknowledged her statement and suggested we take a look around. I didn't know what the person looked like, so I relied on my wife to guide us. She lightly nudged me with her elbow and gestured. A girl with red hair stood behind the small kiosk asking if we were a party of two. Before I could respond, my wife and Ed said we were meeting someone who was already there. The hostess said we could take a look around. I didn't know what the person looked like, so I relied on my wife to guide us. She nudged me with her elbow and gestured. She walked towards the table and stopped, without bothering to sit down. The man looked up, spotted her, and flashed a white smile. It took him a moment to realize there was a man behind her. When he noticed me, his smile vanished, and his eyes narrowed. "This is Robert, my husband. Luke, he's a bit worried about our relationship. I've given him reason to doubt my fidelity for the first time in our marriage. I'll work hard to repair the breach of trust caused by my relationship with you. I want nothing to do with you. There's no reason for you to call or text. I also want to make it clear that I don't want to hear from you in any other way. I take full responsibility for getting to this point, and I've decided that I want to end it. My husband knows about what happened at the Red Horse Bar. I'll do everything I can to salvage my relationship with him, including informing HR of the entire situation tomorrow. I'll let them know that any attempt to engage me in non-work-related conversation will be unwelcome. I don't want to talk about work anymore. I'll just sit at the bar while my husband talks to you." She turned away, kissed me, and then looked into my eyes and whispered, "I'm truly sorry." I couldn't help but glance at her as she walked to the bar. Everything had turned out even better than I had anticipated. I sat down opposite the embarrassed playboy and couldn't help but size him up. He had dark hair and was slender and impeccably dressed, which made him look attractive, but I've never been good at judging men. He was probably around my height, but it was hard to tell while he was seated. I couldn't help but notice his lingering gaze. On the glass of wine on the table across from him, that almost confirmed my suspicions. It was time to keep my cool. I knew roughly what I wanted, but I had to figure things out as I went along. Quick thinking wasn't my strong suit, so I thought it'd be a surprise to see her in a bikini. I said with a half smile, "Do you really believe he told me everything?" I smiled back. Now that this guy was in front of me, I felt pretty composed. I could handle this. I've known this woman for 10 years and I've been married to her for 8. I think I understand her better than some guy who's been chasing her for 3 months. I kept smiling. The waiter came over and asked for my drink order. I told him I wanted a double Johnny Walker on the rocks. He said, still smiling, that she certainly knows how to please a man. He glanced at the glass of wine he'd already ordered for her. Yes, that's true. This time I grinned at him. but I don't think you're speaking from experience. He showed me some photos and joked, laughing. I thought this guy was trying to provoke me. I felt the urge to reach across the table, but instead I laughed. If she had gone that far with you, you wouldn't need to slip something into her drink. What are wannabe rapists using these days? Damn hydroxit, rohypnol, or just good old ecstasy? I was guessing, but his expression made it clear he knew I was onto him. He flinched as I leaned across the table towards him. I was genuinely furious. You despicable coward! I should thrash you right here and now, but I'm not sure I won't end up eliminating you. I don't want to end up in jail at this moment. I gave my wife 3 options, and now I'm giving. I've got 3 options for you. You can either 1. Jab your finger under his nose. 2. Leave right now. 3. Go and apologize to my wife. 4. Resign from your job. I promise not to pursue you. 5. Leave the city. If you do any of those things, I'll know you're serious. If you don't, I'll know you're bluffing. I'll keep an eye on you, but I won't come after you. Then you'll leave the city. I raised a 3rd finger. I signed both of us up for boxing classes in 4 weeks. You and I will step into the ring, sign injury waivers, and neither of us will leave until we pass out. When you wake up, you'll still leave my wife alone. You'll leave the city. The waiter brought my scotch just as I finished. I took a long sip and felt the burn. It was time to regain my composure. You must think I'm a fool. Why would I agree to any of these options? He sneered. I gave him what I hoped was a menacing grin, because you don't want to spend the rest of your pathetic life looking over your shoulder every time you walk to your car at night. You'll find yourself looking over your shoulder every time you walk to your car at night, wondering if I or one of my friends is lurking, ready to break your legs and crush your manhood with a baseball bat every time you enter the door. You won't know if I or one of my pals will barge in, tie you up and castrate you every time you go to a bar. You'll worry if I or one of my friends will spike your drink and subject you to unspeakable acts before you know it. You won't risk it. You're a coward, or so your wife claimed after I had my way with her last night. His face regained color. I took another sip of whiskey, then reached into my pocket and activated the voice recorder on my phone, hoping I should have planned this evening better. You were planning to drug my wife and assault her. Are you willing to risk a lifetime of agony on me not following through? It was time to reel him in. The drugs were just to get her in the mood for when my friends arrived. I was planning to have our way with her tonight, but I lost my cool. I grabbed him by the collar with my left hand and pulled him toward me. I couldn't slap him hard with my right hand because I was sitting down. I heard a satisfying crunch and felt his nose give way. He yelled, holding his nose, and threatened to call the cops. I told him to go ahead, calling him a jackass, and expressing my desire for the authorities to medicate and test the remaining wine in my glass, and listen to the tape of him confessing. The police responded to the disturbance in 10 minutes. It turned out that 2 officers were having lunch at the nearby subway. They took my statement and collected the evidence. The police took the remaining wine and glass for analysis. They also searched Luke and found a packet of white powder. He asked for a lawyer and refused to speak further. They listened to my recording and took my phone as evidence. You could barely hear it, but you could make out Luke discussing medications and a planned assault. It was nearly 4. Before we were allowed to leave the police station after giving our statements, one of the officers spent almost 15 minutes praising me. He emphasized how I had prevented her from being assaulted. By the end, she was utterly shattered. Luke remained in police custody. We used her phone to quickly inform my parents of everything. They stood and promised to take care of Casey. They decided to take her to the zoo as we pulled into the garage and switched off the car. We exchanged glances. She released her seatbelt and enveloped me in a tight hug across the console. I allowed her to. Let her cry on your shoulder for about a minute before gently guiding her away. Sharon, we still need to have a conversation, but it's late, and we should get some rest tomorrow. We'll both go to work and we'll spend the day together sorting things out. How does that sound to you? Yes, Bob, getting into bed sounds wonderful. Before making any decisions, I placed my hand on her stomach and she brought it up to her chest. I felt a surge of emotion, but knew I needed to slow things down. I playfully smacked her flawless backside and said, "Get up, let's take a walk. I don't want to have a serious conversation on an empty stomach." I suggested that we wait until we'd eaten before we had our chat. We ended up showering together, which made our morning routine go by a lot faster. Despite the temptation, I wasn't ready to go back to bed until we'd resolved our issues. We enjoyed breakfast at the International House of Pancakes, chatting about Casey and her upcoming. We had a great time with my parents. We kept the conversation light and upbeat after finishing our last cup of coffee. We settled the bill and returned home, sitting down at the kitchen table to face each other. I thought I'd start. You can see for yourself what kind of person Luke is. I'm not going to dwell on that. He said you satisfied him and called me a teddy bear after sleeping with him a few days ago. Is that true? The worst thing I did with him was that awful night at the Red Horse. I understand the gravity of my actions, but I never went further. She replied, "How can I believe you? You lied about. You went on a date with him last night and lied about the bar incident, not to mention your entire relationship with him." I said it was time to be transparent. I've been thinking about this and I have a suggestion. What about a polygraph test? Do you mean a lie detector? She said she'd be willing to take a test, so I asked her to clarify. She said yes and asked me to set up an appointment. She seemed sincere, but I told her that while these tests aren't foolproof, I'd feel better if she told the truth. I'll see what I can arrange, but it might take some time to set up. I think it's worth considering. I replied that it might take longer than expected. I added with a smile that this is a good starting point. We can revisit the extent of your involvement later. But my next question will likely be the toughest. It's what hurts me the most and has the biggest impact on our relationship. How? Should we move forward with what happened with the underwear? I get that I don't like it, but I understand it's hard for me to deal with the fact that you got close to another guy without telling me. If you thought it was just a platonic friendship, I can understand. What I can't understand is, I felt like walking away before I got hurt again when you said you were seeing other girls when you were actually meeting him for dinner. It was a blatant lie, and disregarding the consequences, it broke my heart when you said you were dating other people. I knew there were tears in my eyes, but I felt powerless. I can explain what I was thinking at the time. First, I want to say how sorry I am for lying to you about everything. When you took on that project for the first time since we've been together, I felt like I wasn't a priority. I'm not blaming you for your work. I understand why you took it on and how important it was to you. I'm just expressing how I felt. I started feeling down, and then my sister Vicky said something that stuck with me. She suggested finding romance elsewhere. I never saw just cheating on you. I realized that while you were busy with the project, I might find what I needed elsewhere. And then Luke came along. I didn't fully realize it, but he made me feel special. He asked about my day, my family, my interests. Our conversations were mostly about me. She sighed, watching my reaction. When Vicky confronted me at lunch, I realized what I was doing. I was using Luke to fulfill what I felt I couldn't get. I still wanted to work things out with you, but things got out of hand. I didn't invite him or his friends. They showed up before my other friends did. Luke bought drinks, including for me. I ended up more intoxicated than I've ever been with you. I've made some terrible mistakes that you know about. But then we had an incredible night, which confused me even more. How could I act so promiscuously with him, but then have such wonderful moments with you? She stood up to pour herself some water, drinking half before continuing. Then, there was the video surfaced. I knew you'd be furious, rightfully so, if you got drunk and kissed. If it had been another woman, I'd have been furious too. I knew it would be worse because after our passionate encounter, you'd wonder if I was thinking of someone else. So I made another mistake. I tried to involve Luke to cover it up. Perhaps he encouraged it, and then made sure I felt obligated to help him out. He wanted to take me to... I went out for dinner when my friends couldn't come and I was lonely. In a moment of weakness, I made a terrible choice, and I'm truly sorry. Our relationship has always been built on trust, and I broke it. She didn't cry, but she was upset. I went over to her and said, "I'm sorry." I kissed her gently, then pulled back. We're not there yet, but if you're fully committed, I am. Sharon and I went to counseling for a while, talking about my issues and how to overcome them. The best thing that came out of it was that even though communication has been a strength since our first encounter, we still needed to work on it. We're still working on it. The counselor also suggested that Sharon get tested for hormonal imbalances at 31. I thought it was a bit soon to worry about that, but it was worth it in the end. After a few tests and a change in birth control pills, she noticed an improvement, but we're not quite back to where we were. We're back to where we were, and things are looking good again. The polygraph test showed that she was being honest in all the difficult questions. I still have some doubts about the accuracy of these tests, but I'm willing to accept it. I've decided to take up boxing lessons while Sharon has become interested in self-defense. The self-defense classes that were on offer there on Thursday nights turned into something else. We also started going to self-defense classes, which Sharon really enjoys, while I'm not so good at it. Sparring has become our favorite form of foreplay. The project was completed 6 weeks ahead of schedule and under budget. My company now competes with major players and government contracts. They wanted to promote me to vice president, but I declined due to excessive travel requirements. Instead, I set up a special projects department, and now I run it. This meant I got a new office and a secretary, as well as an SL assistant. My new assistant has a great figure and a lovely smile, and she's been great so far. Nobody's complained about my wife and me working together, as long as we bring in revenue. I doubt anyone will object as long as we're making money. The $388,000 award bonus from my initial project went towards Casey's college fund. I saved enough for a week-long all-inclusive resort vacation with my wife. I've just got back from an inclusive resort vacation with my wife. My parents are prepared to return our daughter when we get back. I got into a fight with Luke and ended up with an assault charge. Despite this, it's the most fulfilling $300 hours of community service I've ever completed. Luke will serve 3 to 5 years for attempted maltreatment and possession of a controlled substance. The substance turned out to be gamma-hydroxybutyrate. He was also assaulted while walking to his car in the evening, though it wasn't by me. It seems one of his previous victim's brothers caught up with him. The sentence will be 2 to 3 years for the attack. I'm putting $50 a month into his prison commissary account.